China's one-child policy, the legacy of a demographic experiment. China's one-child policy was one of the most ambitious and controversial social experiments in modern history. Introduced nationwide in 1980 and only fully dismantled in 2015, it reshaped family life, labor markets, and China's long-term economic path. 4 decades later, as China faces a full-blown demographic crisis in 2026, the policy's legacy has flipped. What was once seen as a symbol of state control and economic foresight is now widely viewed as a source of structural fragility. Officials once claimed the policy prevented roughly 400 million births, easing pressure on food, housing, and public resources while accelerating China's rise in per capita income. But today, the contrast could not be sharper. In 2025, China recorded just 7.9 million births, the lowest since modern records began. Fertility has fallen to around 1 child per woman, less than half the replacement rate. The question now confronting policymakers is stark. Did the one-child policy enable China's economic miracle? Or did it simply delay and amplify an inevitable demographic reckoning? To understand why the policy emerged, we need to go back to the late 1970s. After Mao's death, China's leaders were gripped by anxiety. Rapid population growth threatened scarce land, water, schools, and jobs. Influenced by global fears of a population bomb, planners worried that economic reforms would fail if population growth ran unchecked. From an economic perspective, population control was meant to support a shift from labor quantity to labor quality. Fewer children per family were expected to raise savings rates, increase female labor participation, and allow more investment in education and health per child, boosting productivity and long-term growth. But implementation came at a heavy cost. Compliance was encouraged through housing, education, and job benefits, while violations were punished with heavy fines known as social maintenance fees. In extreme cases, enforcement involved forced abortions and sterilizations, embedding deep social trauma and long-lasting distrust towards state family planning. One of the most visible consequences was a severe gender imbalance. Cultural preference for sons, combined with prenatal sex selection, led to widespread sex-selective abortions. By 2016, China had an estimated 33 million more men than women. This imbalance has created a generation of involuntary bachelors and raised concerns about long-term social stability. Another lasting distortion is the so-called 4-to-1 family structure. By 2026, millions of only children are entering mid-career adulthood, each potentially responsible for supporting 2 parents and 4 grandparents, without sibling support. This burden suppresses consumption, increases precautionary saving, and intensifies intergenerational stress, especially as public pension systems remain underfunded. The labor market has also flipped. China's working-age population peaked around 2014 and has been shrinking ever since. Once nearly 70% of the population, it is projected to fall below 60% by 2050. The labor surplus that powered China's manufacturing dominance is disappearing. These demographic shifts are now feeding directly into macroeconomic weakness. With fewer children and fewer prime-age adults, domestic consumption, the growth engine Beijing hoped would replace exports and investment, is underperforming. Households save more and spend less, partly due to aging and rising retirement concerns. Nowhere is the demographic shock more visible than in real estate. China's housing boom was built on household formation and expectations of population growth. With births collapsing and the population shrinking, long-term housing demand has deteriorated. The result? Falling prices, excess inventory, and mounting financial stress in a property-dependent economy. Fiscal pressure is also intensifying. China's old-age dependency ratio is projected to reach nearly 22% in 2026, meaning fewer than 5 working-age adults for every senior citizen. Pension and healthcare costs are rising rapidly, squeezing provincial budgets and limiting room for growth-enhancing investment. At the same time, China is facing a growing brain drain. Highly educated and high-net-worth individuals are emigrating at rates far above the national average. Many young Chinese complete undergraduate studies at home, then move abroad for postgraduate education, often settling permanently in countries like the United States or Canada. This creates a paradox. China now faces labor shortages alongside elevated youth unemployment, estimated between 15% and 19% in 2026. Structural mismatches, weak private sector hiring, automation, and declining confidence have pushed many young graduates to lie flat or look overseas. In response, Beijing has executed a dramatic policy reversal, from limiting births to encouraging them. In 2026, the government launched a 90 billion yuan national childcare initiative and introduced annual cash subsidies of about $500 per child. Tax incentives were expanded to reduce education and childcare costs. More controversially, policy has taken on a carrot-and-stick approach. From January 2026, VAT exemptions on condoms and contraceptives were removed, subjecting them to a 13% tax, widely interpreted as an attempt to discourage contraception. At the same time, taxes on matchmaking services, daycares, and kindergartens were eliminated. These measures have sparked public backlash. Reports of local officials monitoring menstrual cycles and pregnancy status have reinforced skepticism towards state involvement in private family decisions, potentially undermining the very pro-natalist goals the policies aim to achieve. So what does the next decade look like? Even under optimistic assumptions, demographic momentum offers little relief. By 2035, China is projected to have around 450 million people aged 60 and above, nearly one-third of the population. Resistance to higher fertility remains strong. Housing costs are high. Career penalties for women persist. Childcare remains inadequate. And government subsidies, roughly $500 per year, are trivial compared with the estimated $75,000 cost of raising a child in urban China. Even if births rebound modestly, the structural trap remains. Newborns won't enter the workforce for 20 years. In the meantime, dependency ratios will worsen before they improve, placing greater strain on a shrinking labor force. China's experience illustrates the idea of an optimum population, a level beyond which declining population begins to reduce economic returns. In hindsight, the one-child policy may have pushed China below that threshold. It delivered short-term gains in per capita growth, but at the cost of long-term demographic resilience. By accelerating aging, distorting family structures, and shrinking the future workforce, China traded near-term stability for a prolonged demographic challenge. As the country moves deeper into the late 2020s, the one-child policy increasingly looks less like a necessary stabilizer and more like a historic miscalculation whose consequences will shape China's economic future for decades to come. Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe.